Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's play it forward. These are real people, real stories, the struggle to play it forward. Episode number 599 is with legendary Jim Shockey, the author of Call Me Hunter.
I'm doing great. Wonderful day today.
You know, you're such a hero for so many reasons to so many different people around the world.
I want the world to know what it's actually about. And if I can educate in that way, it's great to hear that it's reaching people.
Well, now that we have the book, I mean, what's shocking about this is the fact that I can go back and reread these pages. It's not like an episode on TV where, it went by. What did he say? But now I physically will sit there with a yellow highlighter and really take down some great notes.
I hope so. That nothing would make me happier if people would dig deeply into this to uncover the layers that is this novel, Call Me Hunter, because there's many levels of storyline within this one novel.
Put it into book form and into a story form. What was that like? Because you're a man that has traveled the world, and now you're trapped in front of a computer. It's like, how do you do that to Jim?
The process isn't necessarily the most fun in the world, but the end result is what I always look at, the goal. I have no problem setting a goal for half a century down the road. Well, nowadays, probably a little more difficult to do that. But so to sit down, it's just takes discipline. I get up at 4 and write, and by noon, I'm my brain's fried, and it's time to go out and get up there, some exercise, golf, anything. But no, I didn't find that difficult.
Do you read books like from Ted Andrews, like Animal Speak? Because it almost sounds like that there's so many different areas where I think the animals are listening to you, or the land is listening to you, and they know of your presence. Do you walk that street?
Absolutely. I think that, and I've said this before, we get in touch with our ancestral soul when we're out in the wildlands. And like if you jump into a pond, you make ripples, but if you sit still, once you're in that pond, eventually the pond calms and nature starts coming back to being what it is. And that's what hunters do when they're out in the wildlands. I think there's no question that we're all part of nature, and that there's a kindred spirit with the wild animals that are out there. I mean, some are predators, some are prey, but that's, you're not going to get away from that in nature. It is nature, and we're part of that. If we think we're above nature, then I don't think we could ever possibly get in touch with that ancestral soul.
So true, so true. Because, I mean, we replenished this forest in South Charlotte. We planted 1,700 trees, and I swear the animals are grateful for that. I mean, I have a hawk that gets within 3-4 feet of me and just sits there, and it's like we're sitting there having a conversation, and it's like, oh my God, what would Jim do in a situation like this?
Well, it's in the novel. I mean, the characters in the novel have that same ability that, animals, if you watch Discovery Channel or any of those other Animal Planet, or just go online, you'll see video of prey species walking right by a lion because it's all part of nature. It's not hungry right then. The hawk doesn't have to worry about you eating it. And even if you were, it was a prey species, grouse, it could still stand there. And that's, the characters have that same ability. It's just being in tune with nature and being a part of nature, accepting that we're a part of nature.
To create this book, to create the characters and breathe life into them as you take us from page to page to page, did you bring in personal experiences in a way that say, okay, I had this, now I'm gonna bring this storyline together so that people will really, follow what's going on?
Yeah, of course. The whole novel, I say right in the preface, this is my story, and it's up to people to decide what's fact and what's fiction. If they can't suspend reality and they just need to dig, it'll be like quicksand. They'll keep, struggling and sinking deeper into the novel's hold, because so much of it is truth. It's truth. I lived it, and it's my story. Now, what I say, tongue in cheek and wink wink nudge nudge, that it's 80% fact, and the 20% that would put anybody in jail, that's the fiction part. So it's a it's truly based on my life experiences, and I live life out on the edge, not in the middle of the bell curve. That's for sure.
Not the truth. So how did you change personally when you experienced a smudging? Because that is such a moment that a lot of people don't understand, but it's very, very connected to the universe, the great mystery.
Of course it is. Yeah, there's things that we don't understand, and the creator for the First Nations up in Canada, or Native Americans down here, they have a spirituality that maybe it's not, based on our Christian mores and whatnot, but they're in touch with their creator. And to sit there and smudge, it was with Donnie first time. Not the first time was with Jackson, but I remember it was with Donnie when Wojo, toughest guy. I mean, the guy is just a mountain man, truly the last of the mountain men, and I mean, he broke down in tears. This is Wojo, the toughest of the tough, while we smudged with Donnie, who then subsequently passed away a year later. But it's a moving thing. If you're open to it, if you're tolerant and accepting and not stuck, it truly is an amazing experience.
Jim, if you could just see this studio, it's filled with Native American spiritual tools from across the nation. I mean, things from turtles and deer. And I mean, I have a coup stick, and a lot of people don't understand what a coup stick is, but the importance of learning how to work with people and not, have your own place and stay.
That's 100%. We need to be, and it's just tolerance. It's not, again, being stuck in an ideology. It's about accepting other points of view and realizing these are not, they're not dumb people. They're not stupid people. So that, and we're not smart people because we have this ideology. We're better off learning from them and realizing, wow, they are really smart, really intelligent, and they're right in their perspective. It's right and wrong is a cultural perspective. We all inherently know what is right and wrong, but I think you're right down the right path. At my Hand of Man Museum of Natural History, Cultural Arts and Conservation on Vancouver Island up in British Columbia.
Oh my God.
17,000 square feet, full of, exactly. I see a picture of you right now as we're talking, holding a dream catcher. And it's, our museum is filled with the cultural objects from around the world. And you realize, as different as we are, we're all the same. And we just have to be open to listening to the other people, to tolerating their points of view.
And there's a different vibe up there in by the Vancouver area, especially when you get out there by the Puget Sound. Because I remember walking up there so many times, or even taking a ferry, and there's just something that speaks to you in the presence of all of that. Because as a human being, there's nothing I can ever do to create something so beautiful.
No, and it's a primal, it's temperate rainforest. The dripping like Spanish ferns or Spanish moss and the ferns. When you walk through one of those old growth forests, it is, it's a moving experience when you're on the ground, let alone looking at it, from the water, from a ferry or wherever you happen to be. It's a neat place. It's a neat place that it was inhabited 23,000 years ago.
Wow. By
cultures that aren't here anymore. I mean, they're gone. So yeah, it's a neat place. It's the beginning of us here in North America, apparently.
Do you think that the North American deer, especially the whitetail, are becoming too friendly with humans? Because I've got 6 and 8 point bucks in my forest. They're not running away from me, dude. They'll stare at me. They wag their tail at me. I mean, it's almost like we have this relationship, and I'm going, I don't think we're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, the Garden of Eden would have been a neat place, but we unfortunately, that's gone. So this is it's an interesting time when we don't need the food, and someday we're going to need the food.
Yeah, and
then the deer will be running. Trust me. And there's places where they still have that predator-prey relationship with us, but I don't think it's a bad thing when animals are habituated to humans in that way. But I do think ultimately it'll prove to be unsustainable. Nature doesn't allow that. If you let too many of the animals inhabit a too small a space, disease will deal with the problem. That's what she's a harsh taskmaster. So right now, enjoy your deer, but it probably isn't always going to be that way, and it wasn't always that way in the past.
I'll tell you what, the way of the world right now, I have more fear for the innocent animals. And I think sometimes I'm the insane one here because I'm thinking about all of the wild animals because one moment can change the entire planet.
Yeah. We're on an interesting course as humanity right now that and the wildlife. Yeah, I mean, let's face it. There's 25 billion chickens in this world right now. There's 7 billion head of cattle. There's 8 billion of us. There's 5 billion sheep, 5 billion goats. That used to be wildlife, and now it's these domesticated species, and we've done it so that there could be 8 billion of us. We live symbiotically with those species. Even, their chickens are arguably the most adaptive creature that's ever existed. Yeah, so we're on a course that the wildlife is probably going to suffer. The wildlife as we know it, but talk to me in a million years, talk to me in 100 million years, and we'll see what's happened to this Earth. But right now we're headed on a course that's probably not great for the wildlife.
Right. I'll tell you what, those chickens were important to us as farmers up there in Montana and Wyoming because we'd grab those chickens at 5 o'clock in the morning, go out to the haystack, throw it up there on the haystack, and it would find a mouse or something, and we wouldn't be startled. We needed those chickens to protect us. And man, they were very loyal at that. Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a symbiotic relationship. Now they realize that they're going to get eaten, or maybe they don't realize. Maybe that's what's great about being a chicken. You don't look forward. Human beings, we can look forward. I don't know if that's a curse or a blessing, but the mouse, great. It's symbiotic relation. It's looking after you. You're looking after it.
Yeah. The book that you've written is called Call Me the Hunter. I love this, that you continue to reach out to real people, because one of my very good friends, Keith Hawthorne, has nothing but the greatest things to share about you because he's had an experience with you. And he goes, my God, he says, you have no idea what kind of a storyteller this guy is. And you prove it over and over again with what you touch.
Well, thank you. That is, Call Me Hunter is truly my story, and I'm hoping that it resonates with people outside of our the vertical outdoor lifestyle living people, the field to table people. I'm hoping that it'll reach into their lives because it's a good story. Mm-hmm. They can be diametrically opposed to what I believe in, but I'm hoping that they'll be open-minded enough to at least give it a read.
How come we've never seen moose on the menu? I mean, because we have a restaurant just up the street here that has elk, and I love venison. I mean, but why have we never seen moose on the table?
Here in North America, we have the North American wildlife model of wildlife management. Europe, you can see wild animals on the menu, red stag. You can see roe deer.
Yeah,
But here in North America, we're not allowed to buy and sell wild game. So the elk that you're seeing are actually, they're not domesticated, but they're raised in a high fence.
Okay.
Same with the bison that you might be able to buy. Mm-hmm. But you won't find any wild game on the menu. And I think part of that is because of the market hunting back, in the turn of the 20th century, beginning of the 20th century, where they almost wiped out the ducks of the world and the geese of North America because the demand for their meat in New York City was high enough that it pretty well decimated the population. It wasn't hunting; it was commercial harvest of these animals. So here in North America, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt was responsible for it. He said, "No, we are not allowing people to sell wild game meat in North America." So that's the way it stays to this day. Thank goodness,
wow.
Because if you want to eat wild game, you got to go get it.
Yeah. And you've dealt with poachers, haven't you? My God, I can't imagine where your heart went when you had to go face to face.
Close situations, especially in places like Africa, where life, the value of life is not like, they don't hold it on a pedestal. It's just they're there and they get killed and that's the end of that. But they'll kill you by the same, without a lot of compunction if they're doing something illegally. So yeah, I've been over in Africa on the poaching patrols. But you got to do what you got to do. The wildlife needs all the help it can get, and parks are wonderful, but that's inside the parks. What about outside the parks? The wildlife.
Yep.
So that's where the conservation dollars come in, and that's where anti-poaching is a big factor.
Jim, you talk about Africa. I've read nothing but stories about how that seems to be the prime spot for building, and bigger things, which is going to take away the jungles and take away the flatlands as well.
Yeah, I mean, Africa is being colonized economically by China right now. It's been like that for 20 years. When I was over there, I'd see, I mean, truckloads of Chinese workers, and they're damming up rivers. They're dealing with the governments directly, and the governments are indebted to the Chinese. So it's two ways you can colonize: militarily or economically. So what you're seeing is Africa being colonized, and for the resources, and that means wildlife is not high on that priority list because there's no real value there. So whatever the habitat is, that's the biggest threat to wildlife these days is habitat loss around the world. It's not hunting and even poaching to a degree. I mean, specific areas, specific species, yes, but habitat loss is the biggest problem, and the extraction of natural resources without any oversight over in Africa is going to be, it's decimating the wildlife populations.
Are we doing damage to the environment when businesses watershed, or they create these little watershed areas inside?
That's a pretty specific question. I'm not educated on it, but anything you're doing to try and maintain, wild space for wild animals is a good thing. Is it sustainable and is it realistic in the long term? Probably not. I think it's more of virtue signaling and feel good projects. But in that area, people devote their time to a given project. Great. I think really, though, if you look at the bigger picture, there's bigger overriding issues that we need to deal with. The little tiny enclaves are not the way to protect wildlife going into the future.
Because I'm so attached to movie promotions, when I read your book like a movie, and all the way through this book, I've said, okay, I see that the director is going to be Clint Eastwood, and it's going to be Alec Baldwin, and so that team is going to make this book come to life on that big screen.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, great producer and director, and Alec Baldwin. I never really thought about him as the character, but. Maybe Zhivago. I don't know if I'd see him as Hunter. I was thinking more like Kevin Costner as Hunter.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Alec Baldwin. But yeah, that's interesting. I write cinematically, so because that's how my brain works. That's how I think. I've been produced 500 hours of television over the years. So when I write, I'm actually seeing it, and I'm glad to hear that when you're reading it, you're seeing it just like I wanted you to see it.
Yeah, because there's a flow to it, Jim. The flow is that you're taking us to the next page. So, I mean, it's one of those where it's like, okay, I'll read one more page and I'll put the book down. No, you end up reading 10 more pages.
Yeah. I'm reading it again myself. And goodness sakes, I've read it 10 times. I read it to my wife, Louise, out loud even. I read it to myself out loud at one point. But, I'm reading it again to just, now that with time, and last night I should have been asleep by 10 o'clock and it was still 11. I was still reading my own stupid novel. It's like, but I was curious, okay, because I could, I can remember, of course, but if I just read it as a reader, I'm just like you. I want to keep going and see what's next. What's next?
That's it. Please come back to the show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you, Jim.
I appreciate that. It's a real pleasure that I was able to speak with you.
Absolutely. You be brilliant today, okay?
You bet. You too.